So we read chapter 5 and 6 in our math textbook, and chapter 5 really concentrated on number sense and having students understand what numbers are and how they're represented. At the beginning it talked about classification and having students do grouping and classification activities so then they can understand that first as a base to understand numbers, and then talk about the patterns that they have. One way to understand these patterns is with counting. So after they've understand the pattern, sometimes they can understand with skip counting, which is the pattern. Some ways that children learn to count are rote counting first and then rational counting. So rote counting is just knowing the numbers in order and being able to count. And then rational counting is actually being able to do the one-to-one correspondence and understanding that what you're counting objects, actually the number represents how many objects there are. And then later talked about representing numbers and having them in different modes so then students can transfer from one mode to another. So some examples were concrete models like objects in the classroom, pictures, symbols, and then actual numerals. So we need to be able to go between these so students can transfer the information. And then another part I talked about is number relationships and having students understand how numbers relate to each other, so such as 5 is greater than 3. So talk about the more than, fewer than, greater than relationships between numbers. Okay, and then in chapter 6 it focused on place value and understanding what each number in a larger number represents, the digits, and then moving on to knowing all the different ways. So they talked about from kindergarten to 5th grade, their stages. This chapter really gave you a lot of activities and questions you can ask to understand, to see if your students understand place value, and what to do if they don't. I talked a lot about grouping at the beginning to get students to understand when they have 10 ones, that actually is one group of 10. So that's one way to easily understand that. And then at the end, I talked about rounding and estimating a little bit, and how once they've understand numbers, they can use that to estimate by quickly glancing at things, and to do that in their head, it's easier for the grouping, so they can see there's 10 things of 10 objects, so they can estimate that as 100. So those are the kind of chapters 5 and 6. Definitely talked about numbers and helping your students understand numbers.